The midday sun lay heavy on the little frontier town, the dust shimmering in waves that seemed to blur the line between earth and sky. The air was thick with cicadas and the smell of horse sweat, and in that heat the world felt both alive and suffocating. Jason Hale, 33 years carved by wind and grit, rode his bay gelding slow through the main street. He was no stranger to the eyes of others, but today those eyes carried something sharper, for ahead of him he heard a sound that froze him to the saddle. A small girl's voice, thin but unbroken, reached his ears like a cry from a canyon. "Please, mister, please, you gotta save my mama." The words pierced him deeper than the summer light. He reined in, dust curling up around horse legs, and looked down. A child, no more than 6, clutched his stirrup, her little fingers dusty and trembling. Big eyes, wide as the prairie sky, stared up at him with a pleading that held more weight than her years could bear. Behind her stood a boy, hardly 4, trying to be brave but pressing into his sister's side. Jason's gaze lifted, and he saw what they meant. A woman, standing alone in the square, her head shone cruelly, scalp raw and tender beneath the bright sun. Her dress torn, her skin marred by bruises that even distance could not hide. She held herself with a strange fragile strength, shoulders trembling, but her chin still raised. The crowd that circled her whispered like a nest of snakes. He caught words, shameful, ruined, widow ain't worth a dime, and his jaw tightened. The girl tugged at him again, her small voice cracking. "They hurt her, mister. They cut off her hair. They beat her. They say she's no good. But she's my mama. Please don't let them take her away." Jason swung down from the saddle slow, every motion deliberate. The town seemed to hush at the sight of his boots striking dirt. He was a man known for keeping to himself, for carrying a silence that could both comfort and unsettle. Now that silence filled the street. He bent a knee before the girl, resting a weather-scarred hand gently on her shoulder. "What's your name, darling?" "Eliza," she whispered. "This here's my brother Caleb. Mama's Avery." Jason nodded once, the names pressing into him like seeds into soil. He rose, eyes fixed on the woman who tried to stand proud though shame wrapped her like chains. Avery's gaze met his only for a moment before falling, as if she could not bear kindness. The weight of it threatened to undo her. Jason's voice carried low but steady. "Your mama's safe now." The in-laws stood off to the side, their laughter brittle. One of them, a heavy-set man with whiskey on his breath, spat in the dust. "Safe? She ain't safe nowhere. We cast her out, shaved her clean so the world knows what she is. A woman like that ain't fit for family, nor fit for a man to claim." The crowd tittered. Avery flinched but did not speak. Jason's heart burned, though his face was calm. He stepped forward, closing the space between himself and the widow. Her children followed, clutching her skirt. For a moment, only the sound of wind and the creak of the saloon sign could be heard. Then Jason spoke, each word deliberate as a hammer striking iron. "You call her ruined. I call her strong. You say she's cast out. Then I say she's taken in." The words struck the air like gunfire. Murmurs rose. Avery looked up at him, confusion warring with fear. Jason turned to her directly, his voice firm. "Avery, you won't stand alone no more. Not while I draw breath." The in-laws sneered, but Jason ignored them. He reached, not to seize but to offer. His hand extended, palm open. Avery hesitated, the world holding its breath. Then, with trembling fingers, she placed her hand in his. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Jason clasped her hand gently but with a strength that told every soul watching, this woman was under his protection. He guided her and the children through the staring eyes, past whispers that clung like nettles, to his waiting horse. Without ceremony, without boast, he lifted Caleb into the saddle, then helped Eliza climb after. Avery he guided up last, his hand steady at her waist though she shook as if the ground beneath her might give way. He mounted behind, his presence a shield. As they rode out of town, the whispers followed, but so did silence, heavier than before. Jason felt the weight of the little girl's plea, the widow's trembling hand, and the sting of every cruel word. Something within him shifted, as if the lonely chambers of his heart had opened to voices it could no longer ignore. The ride to his ranch was quiet, save for the rhythmic thud of hooves and the soft sniffles of the children. Avery did not speak. She stared at the horizon, her shorn head catching the sun in painful honesty. Jason wanted to tell her she was more than what they tried to strip away, but words felt clumsy, unworthy of the truth he saw. Instead, he let silence do the work, a silence that was not empty but filled with promise. When they reached his land, he swung down, then helped each small body, each fragile soul, from the saddle. Avery resisted his touch at first, shame drawing her back, but the weight of her children pressed her forward. Jason led them into his home, where the air smelled faintly of cedar and the cool shade offered respite. He fetched water, bread, and blankets, setting them down without fanfare. Caleb clung to his leg, Eliza studied him with cautious hope, and Avery stood at the threshold as though afraid the floor might reject her. Jason looked at her, not with pity but with respect. "You'll rest here tonight. No one's gonna lay a hand on you again." Her lips trembled. "You don't know what they say about me." Jason's eyes met his, unwavering. "I know enough, and I don't give a damn what they say." A tear traced her cheek, not of despair but of some new, fragile release. She lowered herself onto the chair, clutching her children close, while Jason busied himself with simple tasks, drawing water, slicing bread, as though her presence was the most natural thing in the world. In the days that followed, the ranch took on a life it had not known in years. Children's laughter, even timid at first, echoed off the barn walls. Avery moved with quiet grace, though shame lingered. Jason never spoke of her bald head. He only placed a kerchief on the table, folded neat, letting her decide if she wished to wear it. She accepted with a whispered thank you, her hand brushing his. In that brief touch, time seemed to slow, the weight of the world suspended. But the town did not forget. Word spread, tongues wagged, and Jason felt the weight of judgment pressing against him. Men at the saloon muttered that he was ruining himself for a disgraced widow. Women shook their heads in pity or scorn. Still, Jason endured. Each evening he returned to the ranch, where Eliza would run to meet him and Caleb would beg for a ride on his horse. One evening, when Eliza called him Pa without thinking, Jason's throat tightened. He turned away so they would not see his eyes shine. Avery fought her own battles within. In the dark hours she stared at her reflection in a cracked mirror, touching her bare scalp and whispering that no man could ever love her now. Jason once overheard, but he did not interrupt. The next day, he placed a wildflower in a tin cup on the table. She noticed, eyes wet, but he said nothing. The silence between them became a language, each gesture a sentence, each kindness a declaration. Slowly, Avery's spirit began to mend. She joined Jason in ranch work, her hands steady on the reins, her voice soft as she sang to her children at dusk. Jason listened from a distance, heart swelling with something he dared not name. Love, he realized, was not the sudden blaze he had once imagined. It was the steady dawn that crept in unnoticed until the world was bright. Yet the town pressed harder. Whispers turned to jeers when Jason rode in for supplies. Men called him a fool, a woman's keeper. Avery heard, and one night she told him, "I'm only a burden to you. They'll never see me as worthy." Jason's reply was simple, but it struck deep. What they see don't matter. What matters is what's true. And what was true, he knew, was that his life had found meaning in the presence of this woman and her children. The climax came on a day like any other, when the sun lay warm across the fields and Avery worked beside him. Jason saddled his horse, tension tight in his chest. Avery watched, fear in her eyes that he might ride away, leaving her once more adrift. But he turned to her, voice low, raw with honesty. "Avery, I can't just protect you. I love you. And if you'll have me, I'll stand by you for life." Her breath caught. Tears welled, not of shame but of being seen at last. She whispered, "Jason, I'm broken." He stepped closer, touching her cheek with calloused fingers. "We all broken. But together, we can be whole." In front of Eliza and Caleb, he knelt, drawing from his pocket a simple silver band that had belonged to his mother. The children gasped, then cheered, their small hands clapping. Avery's tears fell freely as she nodded, voice shaking. "Yes." Jason slipped the ring onto her finger, his hand steady though his heart thundered. The world seemed to still, the sky stretching wide, the land holding its breath. Later, as the family walked into town together, Heads high, whispers followed but could no longer wound. For they walked not in shame, but in strength. And as an old soul might say, reflecting on the sight of a man and woman who chose each other against the scorn of the world, if you have ever been shorn of pride, mocked by voices that call you nothing, remember, dignity is not granted by the crowd but reclaimed in love. For love is not loud. It is the quiet courage to stand by another when no one else will.